I'm Agatha, 38 female. I live in a quiet suburb with my husband, Frank, and our two amazing kids, Leo and Mia. I've built a career as a project manager, a job that revolves around details, timelines, and making sure every piece of a complex puzzle fits together perfectly. It's a skill I thought I had perfected, both at work and in my personal life. But I was about to learn that no amount of planning can prepare you for the deliberate, calculated betrayal of your own family. This is the story of how I planned the family vacation of a lifetime, only to be left standing on the dock while my family sailed away without me, and how a few simple clicks on my phone turned their dream trip into a nightmare they deserved. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The idea for the cruise started, as most of my family's grand ideas did, with my younger sister, Camille. It was at my mom Brenda's 62nd birthday dinner. Camille, ever the social media influencer, was scrolling through her phone, occasionally looking up to offer a distracted smile. "You know what we should do?" she announced, her voice cutting through the quiet chatter. "We should all go on a big family cruise, like a proper one. Alaska, the glaciers, the whales, it would be epic content." She looked around the table, her eyes gleaming with the prospect of curated photos against icy backdrops. My husband, Frank, caught my eye and gave a subtle, knowing smile. He knew Camille's motivations were rarely about family and almost always about her online brand. Still, the idea had merit. My mom's eyes lit up. She had always wanted to see Alaska. My dad, before he passed, had promised to take her. The thought of fulfilling that dream for her was a powerful motivator. Frank and I had been saving for a big vacation, and our kids, Leo 10 and Mia 8, were finally old enough to appreciate such a trip. Even Camille's husband, Mark, a real estate agent who valued appearances, nodded enthusiastically. "Great idea, Cam, a real status trip." The planning, by unspoken agreement, fell to me. It was always this way. I was the responsible one, the project manager who could juggle a dozen moving parts without breaking a sweat. Camille was the ideas person, which was a charming way of saying she'd float a concept and then vanish, leaving me to handle the logistics, the budget, and the inevitable family disagreements. "You're just so good at this stuff, Aggie," she'd say, patting my arm condescendingly. I'd just mess it all up. This time, I didn't even argue. The thought of seeing my mom's face as she watched a glacier calve into the sea was worth the administrative headache. The next 2 months were a whirlwind of spreadsheets, booking websites, and conference calls with a very patient travel agent. This wasn't just a simple booking, it was a multi-family expedition. There was my family of 4, Camille and Mark, and my mom. That meant 3 separate cabins, coordinating flights to Seattle, and booking excursions that would appeal to everyone from an 8-year-old to a 62-year-old. The cruise line was having a promotion, but it required one person to book and pay for the entire package to get the best rate. Naturally, that person was me. "Just tell us what we owe," my mom said. "We'll all pay you back." Camille echoed the sentiment with a breezy, "Yeah, just Venmo request me, sis." I created a detailed budget, tracking every single expense: the cruise fare, the port fees, the travel insurance, the prepaid gratuities, and the excursion packages. The total was staggering, well over $20,000. I fronted the entire amount on my credit card, trusting my family to be good for it. I sent a clear, itemized breakdown to my mom, Camille, and Mark. My mom transferred her share within the hour. Camille's payment, however, was a different story. A week passed. I sent a gentle reminder. "Oh my gosh, totally spaced," she texted back. "So busy with a new brand deal, I'll send it tonight." Another week went by. Finally, a partial payment arrived, less than half of what she and Mark owed. The memo on the transfer read, "For the Paradise trip, so excited." I called her. "Camille, this is only part of it," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "I need the rest to cover everything. The final payment to the cruise line is due soon." "Oh, right," she said, her voice distant. I could hear the telltale clicking of her keyboard in the background. "Listen, things are a little tight this month. Mark's commission on the big Henderson property got delayed. Can you just cover it for now? We're totally good for it. You know we are. This was a classic Camille move. She lived a life that looked fabulous on Instagram, but was often financed by delayed payments and the goodwill of others, mostly me. Ag. Ainst my better judgment, and not wanting to jeopardize the trip my mom was so excited about, I agreed. Frank was less than thrilled. Are you sure about this, Agatha? He asked that evening, his brow furrowed with concern. We're talking about thousands of dollars. Her definition of good for it has been pretty flexible in the past. I know, I sighed, closing my laptop. But it's for Mom. It will be worth it when we're all together. The booking was under my name, and I was the primary account holder. This gave me complete control over the entire reservation, all 3 cabins. I received one booking confirmation number that linked our staterooms, our dining reservations, and our shore excursions. I meticulously forwarded every confirmation email, every itinerary update, and every packing suggestion list to the family group chat. I printed out luggage tags, laminated emergency contact cards, and created a shared digital photo album for us to upload pictures to during the trip. I was the cruise director, the travel agent, and the bank, all rolled into one. I didn't ask for thanks. I just wanted to see my family happy together, making a memory that would last a lifetime. That was the promise of paradise I was chasing. The irony of that phrase would soon become painfully clear. The final email I sent contained all the digital boarding passes with a clear instruction: please print these or have them ready on your phone for check-in. The ship departs at 4:00 p.m. sharp. We should all be at the pier by noon at the latest. Everyone responded with an enthusiastic "got it" or a thumbs-up emoji. The plan was set. All the pieces were in place, or so I believed. The morning of the departure was a symphony of controlled chaos, the kind that's familiar to any parent trying to get their family packed and out the door. Frank, ever the calm in my storm, was on luggage duty, playing a real-life game of Tetris with our suitcases in the back of the minivan. Leo and Mia were vibrating with an almost unbearable level of excitement, their questions coming a mile a minute. Will we see polar bears? Leo asked, his face serious. Do the whales sing songs we can hear? Mia chimed in, clutching a stuffed orca. I smiled, my own excitement bubbling up despite the stress. Maybe not polar bears, honey, but definitely whales. And it's going to be amazing. We had stayed overnight in a hotel near the Seattle Cruise Terminal, Pier 91, to avoid any morning of travel stress. My plan, which I had communicated clearly in the group chat, was for all of us to meet at the terminal entrance at 11:30 a.m. This would give us plenty of time to check our bags, go through security, and get on board to explore the ship before it got too crowded. At 11:15, I sent a text. We're heading over now. See you all at the main entrance by the big "Welcome Aboard" sign. Camille replied instantly with a string of celebratory emojis. Mom wrote, see you soon, dear, so excited I could burst. We arrived at the pier to a breathtaking sight. The cruise ship was a floating city, massive and gleaming white against the blue Seattle sky. The energy was electric, with passengers bustling about, porters whisking away luggage, and the ship's horn letting out an occasional deep, resonant blast. Leo and Mia's jaws dropped. It's bigger than a building, Mia whispered in awe. My heart swelled. This was it. This was the moment all those months of planning were for. We found the designated meeting spot and waited. 11:30 came and went. Then 11:45. I checked my phone, no new messages. Frank, sensing my growing anxiety, put a reassuring arm around me. They're probably just stuck in traffic, Aggie. You know how your sister is with time. He was right. Camille operated on her own schedule, a phenomenon we lovingly referred to as Camille time. I tried to call her, but it went straight to voicemail. I called my mom, and she didn't pick up either. A knot of unease began to tighten in my stomach. The crowds were thickening, and the lines to get into the terminal were growing longer. At 12:15, my phone finally buzzed. It was a text from Camille. OMG, so sorry. Mom's taxi got lost and we had to go find her. We're all here now but are in the priority check-in line. It's moving super fast. Just get in the regular line and we'll meet you on the Lido deck for drinks. I frowned, confused. Priority check-in? We don't have priority access. Her reply was instant. Mark's cousin works for the cruise line, hooked us up, total surprise, see you inside. Something felt off, but the relief of knowing they were safe and actually here washed over me. Okay, they're here, I announced to Frank and the kids. They got some kind of VIP check-in, so we're on our own. Let's go. We wrestled our carry-ons and two very excited children into the sprawling, snaking queue for the main terminal. The line was slow, inching forward with frustrating lethargy. The kids were starting to get restless. FR. Ank bought them snacks from a vending machine while I juggled our passports and boarding passes. Every few minutes, I'd glance towards the priority lane, a much shorter, faster-moving line, but I couldn't see them. It took us nearly an hour and a half to finally reach the check-in counter. The agent, a woman with a warm but tired smile, took our passports. "Welcome," she said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Let's get you on your way." She scanned my passport, then Frank's, then the kids'. Then she paused, her brow furrowing slightly. "Okay," she said slowly, "I have Agatha and Frank, but I'm not seeing the two children on this cabin's reservation." My blood ran cold. "What? That's impossible. I booked it myself. 2 adults, 2 children, cabin 8244. She typed again, her expression shifting from confusion to professional sympathy. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I see the original booking, but it was amended last month. The reservation for this cabin was changed to 2 adults only. The children were removed." Removed? I felt the air leave my lungs. Removed by who? I'm the primary booker. No changes can be made without my authorization. "The change was authorized by the primary guest," she said, tapping her screen. "Agatha, the request came through our call center on May 12th. We have a record of the call." May 12th. I racked my brain. I was in back-to-back meetings that day. I never called the cruise line. It had to be a mistake, a massive, horrible mistake. "Can you check the other cabins on this booking?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Brenda in 8246 and Camille and Mark in 8248. She typed again. "Yes, I see them. Brenda, 1 adult, and Camille and Mark, 2 adults. They are all checked in. They boarded about an hour ago." They were on the ship. My mother, my sister, and her husband were on the ship, celebrating on the Lido deck, while I was standing at a check-in counter being told my children didn't have a place to sleep. The shock was a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I looked at Frank, whose face was a mask of disbelief and dawning fury. I looked at Leo and Mia, who were starting to sense the tension, their happy chatter fading into worried silence. "This is a mistake," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "A terrible mistake." I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I had to call Camille. She would clear this up. This was just a bizarre, technological glitch. It had to be. I found her number and pressed call, my heart pounding against my ribs. I prayed she would answer and tell me it was all a misunderstanding. The shock at Pier 91 was just the beginning. I was about to find out it wasn't a mistake at all. It was a choice. The phone rang once, twice, a third time. My hope dwindled with each unanswered ring. Finally, just as it was about to go to voicemail, Camille picked up. The sound of her voice was jarringly cheerful, punctuated by the faint sound of steel drums and distant laughter. She was already living in the paradise I had so carefully planned. "Aggie, hey, are you guys on board yet? We're at the poolside bar. The piña coladas are amazing," she chirped, oblivious. "Camille," I started, my voice tight and strained. "We're still at check-in. They're saying the kids aren't on the reservation." There was a slight pause on her end. Not a pause of surprise, but a pause I would later recognize as someone trying to formulate the right words. "Oh, that's weird," she said, her tone losing a fraction of its effervescence. "Must be some kind of computer glitch." "That's what I thought," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. "Can you talk to someone at the guest services desk on board? As the primary booker, I'm the only one who could have made a change, and I know I didn't. They need to fix this." Frank was watching me, his expression grim. He put a hand on my shoulder, a silent anchor in the swirling chaos of the terminal. Leo and Mia were looking up at us, their eyes wide with confusion. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Mia asked, her little voice cutting through my panic. I gave her a weak smile, trying to project a calm I was nowhere near feeling. "Listen, Aggie," Camille said, her voice dropping slightly. Let me go talk to Mark and Mom. I'll call you right back." Before I could say anything else, she hung up. The check-in agent was looking at me with pity. "Ma'am, perhaps if you step aside, we can help the next passengers while you sort this out," she suggested gently. We moved to a small, cordoned-off waiting area, a sort of travel purgatory for people with problem tickets. We were a sad little island of a family in a sea of happy, embarking passengers. Every minute felt like an hour. My kids didn't understand why we weren't getting on the big boat, and I didn't have an answer for them. 5 minutes passed. 10, I called Camille back, voicemail, I called my mom, voicemail. I sent a frantic text to the family group chat. Urgent, TH. I are saying Leo and Mia are not booked on this cruise. They won't let us on board. I need you to go to guest services now and sort this out. This is a nightmare. The read receipt appeared under the message from both Camille and my mom, but there was no reply. The silence was deafening, more damning than any excuse. The first crack in the facade of our perfect family trip wasn't just a crack. It was a chasm opening up right under my feet. Why weren't they rushing to help? Why wasn't my mother, the doting grandmother, immediately calling me, demanding to know what was happening to her grandbabies? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, my phone rang. It was Camille. "Okay, so we talked to guest services," she began, her voice now devoid of any cheer. It was flat, defensive. "And," I prompted, my heart hammering, "did they fix it?" She took a deep breath. "Well, here's the thing. There wasn't a mistake, Aggie. It wasn't a glitch." I couldn't process her words. "What are you talking about, Camille? Of course it's a mistake. I booked 4 tickets for my family." "I know, but..." We talked about it. Mom and I, it's just. This was supposed to be a family trip, you know, an adult trip, to relax. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. An adult trip? What are you saying? Leo and Mia are family. They're Mom's only grandchildren. "And we love them," she said quickly, a little too loudly. "Of course we do, but you know how they can be. They're so energetic. Mom hasn't been feeling her best, and we just thought it would be better for her to have a quiet, relaxing vacation. No running around, no kids' clubs, just peace." I was stunned into silence. I looked over at my energetic children. Leo was quietly showing Mia how his toy robot transformed, their heads bent together in their own little world. They were being perfect. You canceled my children's tickets," I whispered, the horror of it dawning on me. "You called the cruise line, pretended to be me, and canceled their tickets." "I didn't pretend," she said defensively. "I just used the booking number and your birthday to verify. It was easy. Look, we were going to tell you. We were just trying to find the right time. We figured you and Frank could still come. It would be like a second honeymoon for you guys. We could all have fun together like we used to." The sheer audacity of it, the premeditated cruelty, was breathtaking. They had let me plan, pay, and pack for a family of 4, knowing full well they had secretly excluded half my family. They watched me send packing lists for the kids. They saw the pictures of Mia picking out her cruise dresses. They let us drive all the way to Seattle, get the kids hyped up beyond belief, and walk all the way to the check-in counter before the trap they had set finally sprung. "Where are my kids supposed to go, Camille?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Well, Frank's parents live in Portland, right? That's only a few hours away. You could just drop them off and still make it back before the ship leaves." I looked at Frank. His face was pale, his jaw clenched so tight a muscle was twitching in his cheek. He had heard everything. He took the phone from my hand. "Camille," he said, and his voice was cold, hard steel. "You need to get off this ship right now and fix this." "We can't just get off," she whined. "We're already settled in. The luggage is in the room. It's not a big deal, Frank. They'll have more fun with their other grandparents anyway." And that was it. The final, dismissive, utterly selfish nail in the coffin of my denial. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coup. They had hijacked my vacation, my money, and my family. The facade hadn't just cracked, It had been sledgehammered into a million pieces. Frank ended the call with a curt, "We'll be in touch," and looked at me. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by a protective fury I had rarely seen. He knelt to face the kids, who were now looking genuinely scared. "Hey, champs," he said, his voice softening instantly. "Looks like there's a little mix-up with our tickets. We're going to have to wait here a bit while Mommy and I sort it out, okay?" Leo nodded solemnly, while Mia's lower lip began to tremble. "But we're still going on the big boat, right, Daddy?" she asked. My heart broke. I couldn't look at them. I turned away, pacing the small waiting area like a caged animal. The pieces were slotting into place, each one a fresh stab of betrayal. Camille's delayed payment, she never intended to pay for 4 people, only 2. The priority check-in, a lie to get them on board and settled before I discovered the truth, making it harder for them to be removed. My mom not answering her phone, she was in on it. She was complicit. That was the deepest cut of all. My own mother had chosen a relaxing vacation with her favorite daughter, overseeing her grandchildren's faces light up at the sight of a whale. "What do we do, Aggie?" Frank asked, standing up and putting his hands on my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. "I don't know," I whispered, shaking my head in disbelief. "I can't believe she did this. I can't believe Mom went along with it." "Greed and selfishness are a potent combination," Frank said grimly. "Camille wanted a cheaper vacation, and your mom wanted a kid-free one. They used you to get both." He was right. I remembered the budget I'd sent. By cutting out the kids, Camille and Mark saved thousands of dollars on their share of the cost, the share they still hadn't fully paid. The cruise line would have sued a refund for the 2 canceled tickets. A refund that would have been credited back to my card, but I hadn't checked my statements recently, trusting that the balance was what it should be. The lie was multi-layered and financially motivated. It wasn't just that they didn't want my kids there, they didn't want to pay for them to be there. My project manager brain, which had shut down in the initial shock, slowly began to reboot. Emotion was a fog, but facts were a clear path. I needed information. I sat down on one of the hard plastic chairs and pulled out my phone. I opened the email with the original booking confirmation. There it was, clear as day. Cabin 8244 guests, Agatha, Frank, Leo, Mia. Then I logged into the cruise line's online portal using my booking number. My hands were still shaking, but a cold resolve was starting to settle in my veins. I navigated to the My Reservation page, and there it was in black and white, a log of all changes made to the booking. On May 12th at 2:15 p.m., there was an entry, customer request via phone to modify booking. Guest Leo removed from cabin 8244. Guest Mia removed from cabin 8244. Fare adjusted. Refund of $3,850 processed to original payment method. $3,850, the exact cost for 2 children. I quickly opened my credit card app. I scrolled back through my statements to May, and there it was, a few days after the 12th, a credit from the cruise line. I had been so busy with work and trip planning that I'd missed it, assuming it was a minor price adjustment or a port fee refund. They had counted on that. They counted on me being too busy, too trusting to notice. The call was made at 2:15 p.m. I checked my work calendar for that day. I had been in a quarterly budget review meeting from 1:00 p.m. to 4:00 p.m. I had a verifiable alibi that I could not have possibly made that call. Camille must have known my schedule. She knew I'd be unreachable. She had my date of birth, my address, all the personal information needed to bypass security questions. It was a calculated act of identity theft to facilitate their fraud. Then I pieced together more, Camille's insistence on a specific cruise line. "My friend went on it and said the adult-only pool area is to die for," she had gushed. The way she deflected whenever I tried to talk about the kids' club or family-friendly excursions. "Oh, we can figure that stuff out later," she'd say breezily. It was all a script. They had been planning this for months. My mother, too. I remembered a conversation a few weeks ago where she'd sighed and said, "I just don't know if I have the energy for a vacation with little ones. I'm not as young as I used to be." At the time, I'd thought it was just a passing comment. Now, I saw it as a seed she was planting, a way to retroactively justify the decision they'd already made. The final piece clicked into place when I saw the cabin assignments. I had booked 3 balcony cabins in a row so we could open the partitions and create one large, shared balcony. 8244, 8246, 8248. Perfect for a family. But without my kids, our room was now just a standard 2-person cabin. My mother's solo cabin and Camille and Mark's cabin were still side by side. They had effectively carved me and Frank out of their little arrangement, leaving us isolated at the end. Their plan was likely to open the partition between their rooms, creating their own private balcony space, while we were left on our own. They planned it all, I said to Frank, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. They planned it from the moment Camille suggested it. The timing of the call, the fake priority check-in, the lies, it was all planned. Frank read the booking change log over my shoulder. His lips thinned into a hard line. This isn't just a betrayal, Agatha. This is fraud. He was right, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. The hurt and the shock were still there, but they were being consumed by a cold, clear rage. My sister and my mother had underestimated me. They saw me as the reliable, accommodating pushover who would absorb the cost and the emotional damage just to keep the peace. They thought I'd be so desperate to go on the adult trip that I'd just find a place to dump my kids and accept the situation. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I wasn't just a sister and a daughter. I was a project manager, and my new project was about to be deconstructing the perfect vacation they had stolen from me. We had a decision to make, and we had to make it fast. The ship's final boarding call would be in less than an hour. We could, in theory, follow Camille's heartless suggestion. We could drive 3 hours to Portland, drop our devastated children with Frank's unsuspecting parents, and race back to Seattle, hoping to make it before they lifted the gangway. We could board that ship, smile tightly through a week of forced fun, and confront them in person. That's what they expected us to do. That was the path of the Elashover. We're not doing that, Frank said, his voice firm, echoing my own thoughts. We are not rewarding this behavior, and we are not abandoning our kids. No, I agreed, a newfound strength solidifying in my core. We're not. I looked at Leo and Mia, who were now slumped in their chairs, the excitement completely drained from their faces. I am not going to teach my children that this is how you treat family, or that it's okay for people to treat them this way. I walked back over to the check-in counter, where the same agent was now free. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady. "My name is Agatha. This is booking number 7J4P2X. I am the primary guest and the sole payer for this entire reservation. I need to know what my options are for cancellation. Right now." She looked at me with genuine sympathy. "Ma'am, the ship is departing in less than an hour. A cancellation at this stage, you would forfeit the entire cost of the trip. There are no refunds for no-shows." "I understand," I said, "but this isn't a standard no-show. The reservation was fraudulently altered without my consent. One of the guests on the booking impersonated me to remove my children. I can prove I was in a business meeting at the time the call was made." The agent's eyes widened slightly. "Fraud? That's a very serious allegation." "It's a very serious situation," I replied calmly. "My family is on that ship right now under false pretenses, on a trip that I paid for. What can you do?" She typed furiously for a few minutes, reading the notes on the file. "Okay. Given the circumstances, I can put in a formal request for review with our head office, but it won't be resolved today. For now, the standard cancellation policy stands." It was a dead end. Trying to fight it through official channels would take weeks, and my family would still be enjoying their free Alaskan cruise. But then, a thought sparked in my mind. A beautiful, simple, and devastatingly effective thought. I was the primary account holder. The entire booking, all 3 cabins, was under my name, linked to my email, my phone number, and my credit card. I still held all the power. I stepped away from the counter and went back to my family. "Frank," I said, my voice low and urgent, "give me a minute, I have an idea." I found a quiet corner and logged back into the cruise portal on my phone. My heart was pounding, not with panic anymore, but with a thrilling, vengeful energy. I navigated to the Manage My Booking section. There in front of me were all the details for our linked cabins. Cabin 8244, Agatha and Frank, Cabin 8246, Brenda, and Cabin 8248, Camille and Mark. Beside each name was a series of options. View boarding pass, add excursions, and the one that made my breath catch in my throat, manage cabin occupants. I clicked on it. A screen popped up showing the names assigned to each room, and next to each name was a small, unassuming button that read Remove Guest. My finger hovered over the screen. Could it really be this simple? Surely they couldn't be removed once they were already on board. There had to be a failsafe. But the system didn't know they were on board. The system only knew what I, the account administrator, told it. As far as the digital brain of the cruise line was concerned, Brenda, Camille, and Mark were just names in a database that I had complete control over. I took a deep breath. This was the point of no return. I clicked the button next to Camille's name. A confirmation box appeared. Are you sure you want to remove this guest from the cabin? I pressed confirm. Her name vanished. A surge of adrenaline shot through me. I did it again for Mark. Remove guest. Confirm. His name disappeared. Then, with a shaking hand, I moved to my mother's booking. Brenda. The woman who raised me, who was supposed to protect me, who chose a quiet week with her favorite child over her own grandchildren. Remove guest. Confirm. The screen now showed 3 empty cabins. I had digitally evicted my entire family from the rooms I had paid for, but I wasn't done. The tickets were just one part of it. The other was the money. I navigated back to the main booking page and saw another beautiful button, Request Full Refund for Cancellation. I clicked it. A form appeared, asking for the reason. I typed, reservation fraudulently altered by another passenger. Children improperly removed from booking. Unable to travel. I submitted the form. A message appeared. Your request has been received. A customer service representative will review your case within 48 hours. It wasn't instant, but it was a start. I had logged the fraud complaint officially, now for the masterstroke. I went back to the booking and re-added myself, Frank, Leo, and Mia to our original cabin. The system accepted it without a hitch. Then I had another idea. The booking also controlled the onboard spending accounts. Each cabin had one, linked to a credit card for all their drinks, tos, and souvenirs. The credit card on file for all 3 accounts? Mine. I navigated to the onboard account settings. I found the section for Camille and Brenda's cabins and, with a few taps, unlinked my credit card from their accounts. Their access to free-flowing piña coladas and souvenir shop splurges was officially cut off. I took a screenshot of every single action I took: the removal of the guests, the refund request, the re-adding of my own family. I saved everything. My heart was racing. I had just launched a digital torpedo at their vacation. It would take a little while for the impact to be felt, but when it was, it would be catastrophic. They were on a ship in the middle of the ocean with no access to their rooms and no money. I walked back to Frank, a slow smile spreading across my face. He looked at me, his eyes questioning. "What did you do?" he asked. "I'm the project manager," I said, showing him my phone. "The project was canceled due to unforeseen moral bankruptcy. I just tidied up the paperwork." He looked at the screen, his eyes scanning the empty cabin assignments. A slow, genuine grin spread across his face. "Aggie," he said, shaking his head in admiration, "you are brilliant." "They started a war," I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. "They just didn't realize I was the one with all the ammunition." The click of that confirm button was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of my old life, the life where I was the family doormat, ending for good. The immediate aftermath of my digital counteroffensive was, anticlimactically, quiet. We gathered our things, told the sympathetic check-in agent that we would no longer be sailing, and walked out of the cruise terminal. The kids were confused and sad, but the sight of the Seattle Great Wheel in the distance was an effective distraction. "How about we have our own vacation?" Frank announced brightly. "Starting right now. First stop, the biggest Ferris wheel you've ever seen, followed by all the ice cream you can eat. Their teary faces slowly brightened. It was Alaska, but it was immediate and it was with us. That was all that mattered. As we found a taxi, I knew we were on a timer. The ship was scheduled to pull away from the dock at 4:00 p.m. Once it was in open water, my family's situation would go from inconvenient to critical. I imagined the scene: Camille, Mark, and my mother, a few drinks in, finally deciding to wander back to their cabins to change for dinner. They would hold their key cards up to the door. The light would blink red. Access denied. They'd try again. Red. Confusion would set in, followed by annoyance. They'd march down to the guest services desk, complaining loudly about the faulty keys. And that's when the bomb would drop. A polite but firm guest services officer would tap at their computer, frown, and say, "I'm sorry, but I don't see you listed as guests in this cabin. In fact, I don't see you listed as guests on this ship at all." My phone rang at precisely 4:21 p.m. The caller ID flashed Camille. The ship had already pulled away from the pier. I could see it moving slowly out into Elliott Bay from the window of our taxi. I let it ring, savoring the moment. Then I answered, putting it on speaker for Frank to hear. "Agatha." The voice that screamed through the phone was barely recognizable. It was a shriek of pure, unadulterated panic. "What did you do?" "Hello, Camille," I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. "To what do I owe the pleasure? I thought you'd be busy relaxing." "Don't play games with me," she screeched. People were yelling in the background. I could hear my mother's voice, high and frantic. "Our key cards don't work. They're saying we aren't on the passenger list. They're threatening to have security escort us to the brig." "The brig, Agatha." "The brig? That sounds dramatic," I replied coolly. "I'm sure it's just a computer glitch. You know, one of those weird things that just happen sometimes." I threw her own pathetic excuse back at her, and the venom in my tone was unmistakable. There was a choked sound on her end. "You did this. This is because of the kids, isn't it? This is insane. You've ruined everything." "No, Camille," I said, my voice hardening. "You ruined everything. You lied. You committed fraud. You conspired with our mother to deceive me and abandon my children on a dock. You did all of this. I just corrected a booking error." "You have to fix this," she begged, her tone shifting from rage to desperation. "Call them, tell them it was a mistake. Our luggage is in the rooms, our passports are in the safe, we have nothing." "Ah, the passports. I hadn't even considered that. They were well and truly trapped." "I can't do that," I said simply. "As far as the cruise line is concerned, you are not, nor were you ever, meant to be on this ship. The primary booker, that's me, canceled your tickets after discovering fraudulent activity on the account. I've already filed a formal complaint." My mother snatched the phone. "Agatha, this has gone far enough," she cried. "You are being cruel and childish. Your sister just wanted a nice trip for us. You have to understand." "Understand what, Mom?" I cut her off, the last vestiges of my respect for her authority crumbling. "That you value a quiet week more than your own grandchildren, that you stood by and let Camille execute a plan to humiliate and abandon us. I understand perfectly. You made your choice. You chose her. Now you get to deal with the consequences of that choice together." I could hear a man's voice in the background, deep and official. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." "They're taking us away," Camille wailed, back on the phone. "They said at the next port, in Juneau, we'll be handed over to port authorities as stowaways." Stowaways? It was better than I could have ever imagined. My little digital eviction had spiraled into a potential international incident for them. "Well, that sounds like a problem," I said. "But it's not my problem. You see, I'm a little busy right now. I'm starting a new vacation, a better one, with my actual family." I could hear Mark yelling in the background now. "Tell her I'll pay for the whole thing, just get us back on the list." "It's a little late for that, Mark," I said. "The time for payment has passed. The time for apologies has passed. This is the time for consequences." Frank, who had been listening with a look of stunned amazement, finally spoke up. He leaned towards the phone. "For what it's worth," he said, his voice laced with ice, I hope you enjoy Juneau. I hear the views from the Port Authority office are lovely this time of year. With that, I hung up. I blocked Camille's number. I blocked my mother's number. I leaned my head back against the seat of the taxi and let out a long, shaky breath. It was over. The meltdown on the Lido deck, which I could only imagine had been a spectacular public affair, was the explosive end to a lifetime of being taken for granted. In the back, Leo and Mia were chattering excitedly about what flavor of ice cream they were going to get. Frank reached over and took my hand, his grip firm and supportive. The ship carrying my estranged family was shrinking in the distance, sailing towards an Alaskan adventure they would never get to have. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt light. I felt free. We didn't go home. We turned what was meant to be the worst day of our lives into the start of the best, most spontaneous vacation we had ever had. We spent 2 days in Seattle, exploring the city like tourists in our own region. We went to the aquarium, rode the monorail, and ate fresh donuts at Pike Place Market. The kids were ecstatic. They didn't mention the cruise ship once. They were just happy to be with us, to have our undivided attention, free from the shadow of extended family drama. From Seattle, we rented a comfortable SUV and drove down the Pacific coast. We had no plan, no itinerary. We just drove. We stopped in charming coastal towns in Oregon, flew kites on vast, empty beaches, and explored tide pools teeming with life. We stayed in cozy little inns and ate at local diners. It was simple, unglamorous, and utterly perfect. It was everything the cruise wasn't. Intimate, genuine, and completely on our own terms. Frank and I reconnected, talking for hours as the beautiful scenery scrolled by. We watched our children laugh and play, their earlier distress completely forgotten, replaced by pure, unadulterated joy. This was what a family vacation was supposed to be. A few days into our road trip, I got an email from the cruise line. My refund request had been approved. Given the evidence of fraud, my work calendar alibi was indisputable, and the fact that the other passengers had been removed from the ship as unauthorized individuals, they were processing a full and complete refund for the entire booking. All $20,000. The money Camille and Mark still owed me, the money my mother had paid, it all came back to me. Financially, I was made whole. Emotionally, I was more profitable than I had ever been. The news of what happened trickled back to us through the family grapevine. A cousin called, having heard a wild, third-hand story. Apparently, Camille, Mark, and Brenda were indeed detained on the ship. They were confined to a guest-less cabin under guard until they reached Juneau. There, as promised, they were handed over to port authorities. Because they were not technically illegal stowaways, they had boarded legally, they weren't arrested, but they were not allowed back on the ship. They had to book last-minute flights from Juneau back to Seattle at an exorbitant cost. Their luggage, which had been unceremoniously dumped from their cabins, would continue on the cruise and would have to be retrieved upon its return to Seattle a week later. They flew home with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a carry-on full of humiliation. Camille tried to spin the story on her social media, of course. She posted a vague, dramatic story about a family emergency that required them to cut their dream trip short, complete with a black and white photo of her looking wistfully out an airplane window. It got a lot of sympathetic comments from her followers who had no idea the emergency was that she was a fraudulent stowaway. We returned home after 10 days, refreshed and united. A few weeks later, a letter arrived. It was from a lawyer representing my mother. It was a cease and desist, filled with blustering legal jargon, accusing me of theft and emotional distress, demanding I return her portion of the cruise fare. I handed it to Frank, who laughed out loud. "She's paying a lawyer to try and get back money from a trip she took you off of and then got kicked off of herself?" he said, shaking his head. The nerve is just breathtaking. We had our own lawyer draft a response, outlining the clear case of fraud and identity theft, and sent it back. We never heard from her lawyer again. I haven't spoken to my mother or my sister since that day on the pier. The silence has been a balm. My life is quieter now, smaller in some ways, but infinitely more peaceful. There are no more passive-aggressive comments, no more financial manipulations disguised as family favors, no more walking on eggshells to appease Camille's ego. The holidays will be different now, birthdays will be different. The entire architecture of our family has been demolished, and I find I don't miss it at all. Sometimes I think about them, stranded on that ship, the panic dawning on their faces. I don't feel guilt. I feel a grim sense of satisfaction. I feel the quiet power of a boundary finally, irrevocably drawn. They thought I was the foundation they could always rely on, the one who would bear any weight to keep the family structure standing. They were wrong. I was not the foundation. I was the architect. And I decided the whole rotten building needed to come down. Our real vacation, the impromptu road trip, cost less than a quarter of what the cruise would have. We took the refunded money and put a healthy chunk into the kids' college funds and the rest into our own retirement account. It was the best investment I've ever made. We traded 1 week of fake, curated paradise for a lifetime of authentic peace. We sailed away from that pier, not on a massive ship, but in our family minivan, heading towards a new dawn that was entirely our own. And the view is absolutely beautiful.